supernatural activity. Furniture moving without apparent cause. Potential hoax. During the years 1977 to 1979, 284 Green Street, a council house in Brimsdown, United Kingdom, became the focal point of claims surrounding the Enfield Poltergeist, a purported instance of supernatural activity. The two sisters primarily associated with the alleged poltergeist phenomena were Janet and Margaret Hodgson. Within the Society for Psychical Research, varying opinions arose. Individuals like inventor Maurice Grosse and writer Guy Lyon Playfair believed in the authenticity of the haunting. In contrast, others, including Anita Gregory and John Beloff, remained unconvinced and discovered evidence suggesting that the girls may have fabricated incidents for the benefit of journalists. Welcome to the place where you'll find your perfect accommodation. If you're the owner of a hotel, motel, or a similar establishment, don't hesitate to reach out for a potential collaboration. Individuals from the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal, including notable stage magicians like Milbourne Christopher and Joe Nickel, raised objections against paranormal investigators, accusing them of being overly trusting. Simultaneously, they pointed out elements in the case that suggested a potential hoax. The narrative gained attention in British newspapers, found mention in various books, became the subject of television and radio documentaries, and was adapted into the 2016 horror film, The Conjuring 2. In August of 1977, Peggy Hodgson, a single parent, reached out to the Metropolitan Police about peculiar incidents at her rented residence on 284 Green Street in London. She reported witnessing furniture movement and two of her 4 children, 11-year-old Janet and 13-year-old Margaret, hearing knocking sounds on the walls. A police constable, upon arrival, observed a chair wobble and slide, but couldn't pinpoint the cause. Subsequent claims involved disembodied voices, loud noises, toys being thrown, chairs being overturned, and reports of children seemingly levitating. Throughout a span of 18 months, a diverse group of over 30 individuals, including neighbors of the Hodgsons, paranormal investigators, and journalists, claimed to have witnessed phenomena such as substantial furniture moving without apparent cause, objects being hurled across rooms, and the sisters appearing to levitate several feet above the ground. Numerous people also reported hearing and recording knocking sounds and a gruff voice. The Daily Mirror newspaper consistently covered the story until reports ceased in 1979. During the investigation, Society for Psychical Research members Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair documented curious whistling and barking noises emanating from Janet's vicinity. Despite Playfair asserting the legitimacy of the paranormal phenomena in his later book, This House is Haunted: The True Story of a Poltergeist, attributing the Enfield disturbances to an entity, he occasionally cast doubt on the children's honesty. He pondered whether they might be engaging in deception or exaggeration. Nevertheless, both Grosse and Playfair maintained the belief that, even if some of the poltergeist activities were staged by the girls, certain incidents were authentic. Notable paranormal investigators, including American demonologists Ed and Lorraine Warren, conducted a study of the case in 1978 and firmly concluded that supernatural forces offered an explanation for the events. Janet was caught engaging in deceptive activities. A video camera placed in an adjacent room captured her bending spoons and attempting to bend an iron bar. Grosse witnessed Janet banging a broom handle on the ceiling and concealing his tape recorder. Playfair noted that one of Janet's voices, identified as Bill, had a tendency to abruptly change topics, a behavior also exhibited by Janet herself. Upon the admission of pranks to journalists by Janet and Margaret, Grosse and Playfair pressured the girls into retracting their confessions. Their susceptibility to deception led other researchers to mock the two men. Renee Haynes, a psychical researcher, highlighted doubts raised about the purported poltergeist voice during the SPR conference at Cambridge in 1978. Videocassettes from Enfield were scrutinized at the conference. Investigator Anita Gregory from the SPR expressed that the Enfield case had been overrated, characterizing certain episodes of the girls' behavior as suspicious. Gregory speculated that the girls might have staged some incidents to cater to journalists seeking sensational stories. John Beloff, a former president of the SPR, conducted an investigation and proposed that Janet might be practicing ventriloquism. Both Beloff and Gregory ultimately concluded that Janet and Margaret were employing tricks to deceive the investigators. American stage magician Milbourne Christopher conducted a brief investigation into the Enfield occurrences but did not witness anything he deemed paranormal. expressing dismay at what he perceived as suspicious behavior from Janet. He ultimately concluded that the poltergeist was nothing more than the antics of a little girl who wanted to cause trouble and who was very, very clever. Ventriloquist Ray Allen also visited the house and determined that Janet's male voices were merely vocal tricks. Skeptic Joe Nickell from the US-based Committee for the Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal scrutinized the conclusions of paranormal investigators, criticizing them for excessive credulity. When a purportedly disembodied demonic voice was heard, Playfair noted that, as always, Janet's lips hardly seemed to be moving. Nickell points out that investigator Melvin Harris demonstrated pranking by the girls using a remote-controlled still camera, emphasizing that the photographer wasn't present in the room with the girls. He argues that a photo supposedly depicting Janet levitating actually shows her bouncing off the bed like a trampoline. Harris dismissed the photos as examples of common gymnastics, and highlighted, "It's worth remembering that Janet was a school sports champion." Nickell highlighted that a tape recorder malfunction attributed to supernatural activity by Gross and described by SPR President David Fontana as an event, which appeared to defy the laws of mechanics, was, in fact, a peculiar threading jam commonly occurring with older model reel-to-reel tape recorders. Nickell also remarked that Ed Warren was notorious for exaggerating and even making up incidents in such cases, often transforming a haunting case into one of demonic possession. In 2015, Deborah Hyde commented that there was no substantial evidence supporting the Enfield Poltergeist. The first thing to note is that the occurrences didn't happen under controlled circumstances. People frequently see what they expect to see, their senses being organized and shaped by their prior experiences and beliefs. Skeptics contend that the purported poltergeist voice originating from Janet was created using false vocal cords above the larynx and exhibited the phraseology and vocabulary typical of a child. In a television interview for BBC Scotland, Janet was observed attracting attention by waving her hand and then placing her hand in front of her mouth while a claimed, disembodied voice was heard. During the interview, when both girls were asked, "How does it feel to be haunted by a poltergeist?" Janet responded, "It's not haunted," and Margaret, in a hushed tone, interjected, "Shut up." Skeptics have considered these elements as evidence against the authenticity of the case. As a magician experienced in the dynamics of trickery, Nickell scrutinized Playfair's narrative and contemporary press clippings. He observed that the purported poltergeist tended to act only when it was not being watched, and inferred that the incidents were most plausibly explained as children's pranks. Despite Gross making tape recordings of Janet and believing no trickery was involved, magician Bob Cowdy remarked, "He made some of the recordings available to me, and, having listened to them very carefully, I came to the conclusion that there was nothing in what I had heard that was beyond the capabilities of an imaginative teenager." All the recordings have been documented and digitized by the SPR, and a book detailing their content, The Enfield Poltergeist Tapes, White Crow, was compiled by Dr. Melvin Willen in 2019.